Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, ships at sea, welcome to this week's episode of Property of the Week with PropertyLens. I am Bob Frady, co-founder and CEO of PropertyLens. With me,
John Sigmund, co-founder and president of PropertyLens.
And this week we have a very special guest. We are thrilled to have Mr. Martin Ellingsworth, president of Salt Creek Analytics, as our guest for the week. Marty, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Bob. Thanks for having me, John. Full disclosure to everyone, we've known each other for a while, and we're even despite that, we like each other. So I'm here to talk about PropertyLens. I've seen them at the Creative Destruction Lab. I've seen them around the industry for more than a decade, and these guys really know what they're talking about. And today I hope we get to show you a little bit about what they're doing.
So Marty's the guy we lean on when we want to know someone in the industry, because whenever we look somebody up who we want to talk to, Martin Ellingsworth is a connection. I like that. This guy knows you know everybody. Is there anyone in the industry who you don't know?
Probably I don't know anybody, and at the same time I'm linked to all of them. 20 years of LinkedIn, will get you there. And I've always been a fan of, if you can't do something for them, help them find someone who can. So I'm a connector at heart.
There you go. So what we do normally is when you go to PropertyLens, you type in an address, you go through a purchase process, and then your report comes up. We're going to skip that part because it's not all that exciting. And Marty has graciously volunteered his own abode to be analyzed as the property of the week. Now, the interesting thing is that this property hasn't been on the market, I believe, since 2011. Looks like when you bought it. So we'll see what it says. For a house that hasn't been on the market, what kind of information do we have?
Minor spoiler alert. We had done a full remodel in 2013, about 10 years ago. So some of the things, might be structurally the same, and some of them might be, interiorly different.
Let's see what happens. So here's your house in Dana Point, beautiful Dana Point, California. And
it's like a recent picture, yeah.
And view the report. Okay, so here's what we do. When we get an address, we send out a lot of requests for information, both internally and externally. So we pull together the same pieces of information that insurance companies are using to underwrite your risk or banks are using to evaluate your property. And we put it all together into a report. Now, on top of that, we add some AI and some rules to say, pull out some of these highlights, because it can be overwhelming looking at all this data. And the first thing that we have is the buyer lens. And John, what's the buyer lens showing us today?
Well, the buyer lens is showing us all of the things that you would want to ask the seller about with regard to the house. So first thing that you want to know is that termites. Welcome to Southern California.
Oh, man. And they are rampant. Termites love this area for the old wood and the new wood. There's a lot of tear down construction, here. A lot of these places were built in the 70s. When we got the place originally and inspected it, termites everywhere. So spot on.
Have you had termites at this property?
Oh yeah, they were here when I got here. So
okay.
Absolutely a thing of the past and future. Yeah, because if you don't keep up, you'll just see a swarm of termites going up the valley, and you go, "Oh yeah, I guess they're around."
Okay, there
So
you go. Termites, yay! And that's not something that's usually disclosed when you sell a house. It may be in the disclosure language, but this is the kind of stuff you want to ask beforehand. And you may want to say to the seller, "Hey, I want to get this place tented before we move in."
And we did that. You should absolutely do that. And if it's their termites, they should pay the bill too, I would argue. But that's all up to the negotiation.
Yeah, those are your termites, pal. All right. What do we got up next there, John?
Well, you got a roof. Welcome to Southern California. If it is a tile or concrete roof, it's going to last a long time, 75 years. So a lot of people, will never end up in Southern California living long enough to replace their roof. But, it appears to be in good condition, which is always good. And if you had to replace it, we're looking at, probably about $45,000 to replace the roof.
Yeah, so a lot of the aerial imagery systems get my roof wrong. The guy who built this was in the military and traveled the world and somehow figured out that cement tiles, like they use in Australia, are like the thing he wanted here. So when we did the remodels, we didn't touch the roof. It's in great shape. It looks weird from the air because it's fashionable to paint those tiles. Who knew? So the for a while the paint was a little chippy and rough looking, and now it's all settled back down. So yeah, roof's in great shape. Cement tiles. I won't say bulletproof because I don't want anyone shooting my roof, but
That's
but
that's
with
one risk we don't measure. Has your roof
Yeah.
been shot up?
yeah,
Not in the evaluation.
Southern California roofs in general tend to be pretty good construction. Not as many issues as you'll find in some other places. And this roof looks like it's in great shape.
yeah. Now,
Uh,
a rental house I had, and a house I bought 30 years ago up in Irvine, shake roof. Um,
oh yeah.
Completely scary, like a fire hazard to yourself and others. Yeah, if you get a shake roof, shake it off.
so, and we're going down the Taylor Swift rabbit hole. All right, we need as many Taylor Swift quotes as we can in the rest of the show. I don't know any. That's the only one I really know. Okay, so it looks like this house is in some has some exposure to wildfires. Have you had any feedback from your insurance company about mitigation or about insurance?
So I've bought this house about maybe a dozen years ago. I had it re-inspected after my rebuild, and I've done some kind of fire loss control discussions where I looked at defensible space and I pulled back trees and I clear off the slope. So me personally, yeah, I've done a lot of that because I'm in the insurance industry. And when I was working at USAA, who's currently my carrier, um, yeah, I worked there in 18 and 19 and worked on these ideas around, imagery from space, looking at properties. So I was at a front row seat to what would you do to take a house in a near a canyon with a lot of wildfire exposure and make it as safe as possible. So ember guards, clear space, the 5 foot of freedom type of don't let anything touch your house. I've wrapped the whole house in like cement, walkways. So everything I can do, I've done.
See, that's a huge selling point. If you ever did put this house up for sale, with California, of course, is on edge about wildfires these days, but all the steps you've taken for mitigation should just increase the value of this property versus properties around it, which is
And
which is
also
good to
make
hear.
it easier to underwrite, all right?
Yeah. Well, easier. That's a whole nother matter. But yeah,
Easier.
you would hope so. And next, it looks like we've got California is subjected to earthquakes. Have you had any earthquake damage in the property before?
Not that I can tell, but wood frame on stucco is, you know, about as friendly as you can get for an earthquake area. It shakes, maybe it cracks, but it does that when it settles anyway. Overall, I'd say nothing here interesting in earthquakes. We're pretty far from the faults, but like the canyon behind me, you can't escape an earthquake.
Have you had any leaking or cracked pipes in the house?
I have not, but we did repipe everything. With I figured I had a 75 or 100-year roof, so I put in 30, 40-year copper pipes, and I don't plan on having to like move out of my house before I pass away.
Very nice. Well, hopefully that's not for another 40 years or more.
50, 60, maybe.
Okay. Now, now we get into age and condition. John, you want to take this part?
So, Marty, you moved in. Property is 51 years old. Sewer lines last 40 to 60 years. Have you had any issues? Have you done anything to them?
We did. We replumbed and went all the way out to the street to the sewer system when I moved in because it's like I don't want to deal with that. That house I rented back in Irvine, big sewer problem, and trenching to the street is a mess. So while the whole place was ripped apart anyway, that was a good time to dig a new line and make sure we didn't have a problem.
Again, it ka-ching. it goes into the thumbs up column when you're talking about buying this house.
Yeah, but you don't see that improvement. I mean, it's it was a open trench when it was being done, and now it's all filled in and has flowers on top of it.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. When was the water heater last replaced? Because the average service life is about 12 years.
A new one. We went tankless. The so less issues around water leaks with a tankless. It does more recirculation. For anyone who doesn't have a tankless, you're gonna love it because the hot water stays hot all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got a tankless. So here's a funny story about tankless water heater. We have kind of rough water in this area, and we're going to get a whole house filtration system. And the guy measured our water and said, "Hey, by the way, did you know that the hardness of this water invalidates the warranty on your tankless water heater system?" And then
Oh,
2 weeks later, the system failed. And
oh, now
so we
was your system built in front of or behind the water softener?
it's behind the water softener now.
Wow.
So
Yeah, now, yeah. So that's the way to go. It's like you put in the softener system first and then the tankless after that. So yeah, you still gotta like purge it once a year. But that's not a big deal.
yep. And we don't see any solar roofs on the property.
There is an interesting patio cover. It's aluminum and it sits between the main house roof and the wood patio overlook, and it's got aluminum louvers on it, so you can open it to the open air, let some light and breeze in. But a lot of the aerial imagery doesn't know what to do with that because it's a weird piece of roofing, I guess, for a lot of patios. But it sits over the barbecue area, so you can do year-round barbecue.
Let's call it iconoclastic rather than weird.
Ooh, I like that word.
There you go. Now, so the whole goal of questions like this is to have a conversation with the seller or the seller's agent in this case to say, here's all the things I want to know. And after hearing those answers, these are great answers. This is a great house if you were going to buy it. So, and then I'd be like, all right, now I want to make an offer because I know that this guy's been taking care of this place and all these concerns are addressed. Or if I'm listing the house, these are the things that people are going to come to the table with and say, hey, what about all this stuff? And you aced the test there, Marty. You did. Great job.
So
Good
just
job.
say $27 million and I'll be happy.
Yeah, there's a couple of houses in your neighborhood that are going for that much money. But maybe not this one. So then we say, well, let's say you've made an offer on the place. What are some of the things that you would tell the inspector to take a special look at? Because remember, the inspector doesn't work for you. The inspector works for the seller. And so you want to make sure that they answer these specific questions to say, how do we ensure that you're taking a look at the stuff that needs to be done? And John, if you were going to hand this to an inspector, what would you tell them to look at?
Well, pretty much the same thing that we just went through with all the questions. You want them to get up in the attic and take a look around for termites. And they'd also look at the eaves because that's an easy place to find any type of termite damage. And if there's a wood fence, you're going to find it there as well. We now know about the roof. So quite honestly, the inspector might not even know what type of roof this is, given the unique Australian nature of it. So you'd want to, you may have to hire somebody who actually does roofs if you were truly concerned about the roof condition. From the wildfire standpoint, you want to make sure that all the clearance, everything that Marty talked about was taken care of. And then, from an earthquake standpoint, all the straps for water heaters and such things like that.
From a livability standpoint, I'd have to say that the thing that's changed in the last 10 years is my cul-de-sac is a hover point for Amazon and UPS trucks. That didn't happen when I moved in here. But somehow between getting everything, push button ordered and like door to door delivered, it's become a thing.
Yeah, in Southern California, and Amazon delivery trucks go together like peanut butter and jelly. So they're everywhere. It looks like this place has a fireplace as well. Is that accurate?
It is. We replumbed it to put in fully enclosed furnace. So it used to be wood burning. Now it's gas burning. It is heat producing, but it's an enclosed furnace.
Okay, great. And then finally, the insurance lens. What you need to know about insurance. And, earthquakes an excluded peril. And the one thing that I would do if I were looking at this house, the first call I would make is to an insurance agent to make sure I can get insured for this property. Now, USAA is great. You have to be a member, but they're really very aggressive in trying to make sure that their members get insurance. They go the extra mile to keep insuring you rather than looking for reasons to get rid of you, which is great. But not everyone's on USAA. So the first thing I would do is make that call. Or if you wanted to, there's a link down lower in the report that says, check out insurance for this property. So that's the first thing I'd do here. Earthquakes excluded, and then the rest of it is, relatively straightforward. There's a replacement cost. It's probably a little bit more now because you've done some customization to the property, but the land is worth a lot. And that's the big part of the cost for your property.
Well, I think you're a hydrant hunter in past lives. It'd be nice for you to know that there's a hydrant at the edge of my driveway.
You know what? I love houses with the hydrant right there. It's like, just gives me maybe a false sense of comfort, but it's still a sense of comfort. So then we get into the data itself. So here's the real estate data for the property. We'll skip all this part. This is the kind of stuff that you can see on a real estate listing. It tells you the municipality, it gives you the parcel number, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that's really interesting about this is I read something where, a lot of places look like single family houses, but they're actually condos. This is not one of those houses. Yet when you go for financing a condo is different than financing a single family residence. And so one of the things we tell you is, what exactly kind of property is this? And this is a single family residence. Here's the most recent listing details. It's been a long time. 2011, this was last sold. Market value is pretty strong, which is great. Good for you. There's no listing details and no description because we don't go back that far. We go back about 7 years for most of our MLS data, because really what this is a report that's designed for people who are buying a house. That would assume that the house is for sale. Here's some of the ownership changes. It looks like there's been a couple of deed changes, just one really recently.
Family trust.
Yeah, family trust. Here's the property tax for this location. You can see by year what the taxes are. Now, when you sell a house in California, it reassesses to the market value. So this number would be different if you were buying the house, but this is what the property taxes are like.
Yeah, that's why the family trust too. It's like if there's a probate issue and the kids want to sell it, but if they want to hold on to it, it's a better way to not have that accelerated to the real market value.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, Marty,
What was that?
not so with the changes in the law.
Oh,
The
no.
house will be reassessed at the time of your untimely demise.
Oh,
and
no. Well, that
people
was
fail
old
to
thinking.
They then have to accept the new basis for the tax.
Oh, well, they're going to hate that. That's going to be, pushing 2,100 a square foot at the current sales, rates here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a real concern, that your mortgage, if you have a mortgage or don't, your mortgage amount generally stays the same, but property taxes and insurance just keep going up. So
Keep going up. Well,
it
USDA gave us a hefty raise this year, so they're not immune from rate raising, but they didn't threaten to cancel me. They just sent me a bigger bill.
yeah.
Still like to go. So this is an older picture. I've taken out the two big coral trees that you see blooming over my roof line in the back.
Okay.
The little magnolia in the middle is still there, but it's not that close to the roof. That's kind of a late afternoon shade throwing that you see.
It looks like this picture was as of August 13th. Is it recently that you took those out?
Yeah, in September.
Okay. Look at that.
There we
Yeah.
go.
And it looks like your roof condition is good. You have a low exposure. There's not a lot of stuff coming out of the sky that could harm that roof in the way that insurance companies look at it. Now, you can make some arguments about wildfire and embers and all that stuff, and does that add to the risk? And
It does.
yeah, right now the insurance industry doesn't look at that as much as they should, but it's something that we're considering for the future to make sure we add a little bit of sauce on for the wildfire risk. The minimal tree overhang, it's tile roof, hip construction, a little bit of standing, but that's no big deal. No weather events in this area, which is really unusual.
That's what everybody pays for.
Yeah,
No weather events.
is.
Yeah, that's the weather tax that you pay in Southern California. Like you'll see places in the Midwest, it's like this is like a laundry list of events, but in Southern California, not in Southern California, dude, not Dana Point. It's excellent, most excellent. You can go back and look at historical imagery. We've got data going back to all the way to 2016, and you can see that hillside was not nearly as grown in as it is now in 2016.
So a point on that, if since you knew I was at Celent for a couple of years, I did an aerial imagery overview of my house in a property study where I was looking at data from pictures. So yeah, you can see, I think 2016 to 2022 pictures, and I kind of walk through the ground truth of roof line and trees on property. People thought I had put in a filthy pool in my backyard, but all I'd done is switch to plastic grass. So it was big and square and green. So it looks like, geez, Marty, pick up your pool.
Well, are we showing a pool here? I don't think we are.
I don't have a pool, but I did. But the plastic grass looked like one to the AI. You can see it on your overlay. There's on the right side,
Yep.
it's kind of the natural grass, and then when you swoop by, it's all pretty flat. Yeah, the new grass is all pretty and flat.
Looks like a putting green out there, but I know you don't
Yeah.
play golf, so
Not
yeah.
really. I mean, nobody calls it golf when I play. You can see I expanded the front driveway by extending so I got rid of the ugly grass and put in stone.
There
And
you go.
got rid of the
All right.
grass and the stepping stones and put in plastic grass. So it's a simpler, easier, less termitey.
I think the local utility probably gives you a little kickback for putting in that the plastic grass since you're
There
not
was a
using water.
discount, and the water bill's crazy low.
So it looks like you did some work on this house about 11 years ago in 2013.
That was the big year.
And you had new windows, doors, a new skylight, new underground plumbing, which would be the
Yep.
sewer, a new meter panel upgrade. You did a remodel, and you did the stucco replacement all around the same time from Luco Custom Construction. There's no homeowner service history because we don't offer that yet. We don't have inspection data. We have the estimated utility costs per month, along with how much solar could generate or save you that month. You could go net zero on solar if you really wanted to. It gives you your provider. If you have to go and get service, we give you a link to that provider. If you are considering solar, we give you a link to get a quote. The payback period with federal incentives would be about 4 years for you. Some people like it, some people don't, but it's there, if the new owner's considering it.
So solar panels are really popular in the neighborhood. I might get around to looking at it. I'm waiting for I was waiting for the big breakthrough though. I keep expecting the thin film, high output solar thing to be invented any day now.
Let me tell you something, Marty. When I was at Cornell University in 1981, I was an engineering student studying thin film photovoltaics. The breakthrough was just a couple of years away in 1981. And
So
here
any
we
minute,
are
all right?
a lot later than 1981. Any minute now. This time for sure. Then the risk assessment. So here's your risks. You got earthquake and wildfire. The area does get droughty sometimes, and you're on a hill, so there's a slight bit of landslide risk as well. Any issues with landslide at the house at all?
Not in this neighborhood. No, anyone who was watching the news last year at the house on the the headlands, maybe 2 miles from here, a lot of coastal subsidence or what's the term for that?
Erosion.
There you go. Erosion. And up the street, maybe a mile or two, I think they kind of built on a berm, and you'd seen some subsidence. But here in the terraces, it's built on rock. You can't even dig a hole without a pick. So it's firm up here. But there are issues around the neighborhood, and certainly in Southern California generally.
The next is flood. You're not in a digital flood zone, either 100 or 500
I'm
a year.
450 feet above sea level. I should be good.
Your flood insurance is not required nor recommended for your property. If you wanted to, we'll have a little button in there that says if you want to get a flood insurance quote, if you're really paranoid. Like, for example, if there was a water tank at the top of the hill and that water tank collapsed, that's a flood and you're stuck with it.
On the other side of the
So,
ridge line, there is a water tank. So, that's very serious about this community, and anybody downhill from that.
yeah, exactly. So then we've got distances too. You're not in an area. Extreme weather disasters. It just gives you more detail on what we've already laid out there a couple of times. Pelican Hill is the closest fault, and you're about 6.5 miles from it. It'll give you a good shake if you if you do have an event. But you're right. Watching your house wiggle back and forth during an earthquake is always a fun thing to do in Southern California. And other than that, you don't have a lot of weather risks at all. And then we've got environmental pollution. Termites is number one, but other than that, there's really nothing there. Not the nearest leaking underground storage tank is a mile away. Oh, excuse me, almost a mile away, down on PCH. No meth labs in the neighborhood. That's good news. No brownfields, no super funds. And then insurability and claims. We have a service that looks at all the filings and says, based upon the square footage of your house, here's an estimated price. Those numbers may be correct. They may not be correct, but we do express it as a range. Here's your replacement cost per square foot. Make sure your Schedule A is up to
I'd pay $100 for this report if I was buying a house.
That's our goal is people do that. And this is where we offer you the ability to go out and get an insurance.
Yeah, well, I like that you see one from Ken. They have a special place in my InsurTech Hall of Fame. Smart people, good products, and great analytics.
Yeah, they're very good at what we'll call the cherry picking. California insurance market is a little bit tough right now, and people do things like switch entire zip codes off, which is ridiculous from an underwriting standpoint, but it's what they do because it's easy. And Ken is like, well, we don't need to use that. We can just use the parcel and do a really good job at finding those pieces of gold in the areas that people just sort of shut off willy-nilly.
So many companies still don't use geospatial data, and they still don't even have great address data. So, being able to do something like an accumulation assessment or a proximity to fire line, assessment, distance to coast, you name it, things that would be natural for you or John are out of touch and out of reach to a lot of what you think were sophisticated insurance companies. But it is what it is. A lot of commercial lines and personal lines systems were, written in the 80s and 90s or before, before the internet. If you can even believe that, it's like 1991.
Oh, we got a call. I can't remember why. I think it was during COVID, and somebody was looking for C++ programmers. And I'm like, you just call your local municipality. There's probably a bunch of them there because their systems were so old that was the most recent tool that they had. I think it was C++. It was really some old.
COBOL.
It was COBOL. They wanted
I was gonna say,
COBOL
it's not like
programmers.
COBOL, but
Yeah, it's COBOL programming because so many systems are still written in
Yeah,
COBOL.
and
Like,
and
holy
that's why they
cow.
don't upgrade, because if they break them, the whole thing goes down the drain.
Yeah, yeah. We don't have any claims on this property because we don't have claims right now in the system. Um, then it's good crime, good fire protection. The nearest fire hydrant is less than 250 feet, and you have 18 within 1,000. There's a lot of fire hydrants
Yeah,
around you.
well, some of them are 450 feet down the hill though, so it's, it's some things on
And a
a
lot
flat
of
some
fire
things on a
stations.
flat earth assessment, are, not practical.
We do take that into account when we could tell you how far the fire station is. We'll give you what's the drive distance in miles to the location, and what's the drive
Mhm.
time also for those locations. Then finally, the property timeline, where you can start to see all the historical imagery. And really, not a lot has happened here because there's nothing that you would publicly um, do. So there's the title change, then more imagery, and then you can see all the action started to happen back in
Yeah.
2013. So that is the Property Lens report. And then you can download it to a PDF. You can send it to your friends.
Well,
You can, give it to a realtor or
so,
whatever.
a lot of people can get data from the internet and stick it in a system. Uh, Others are, perhaps less good at feeling so comfortable with the quality of the data they pull and how they present it, that they wouldn't show it, live demo on a recorded, image like this. So, props to you guys. The data is accurate. Checks off on everything I know about it, and someone who wanted to buy this house should wanna know that too.
So we like to wrap up our analysis by saying, if you were going to buy this house, based upon the information that you see in this report, what are the top three things that you focus on? So let's start with you, John. If you were going to buy this house, if it were for sale, based upon the information that you see in the Property Lens report, what are the top three things you'd be looking for?
Well, first of all, everything's for sale. If somebody came in and handed Marty $6 million, he'd leave him the furniture and be gone tomorrow. The see, so it's for sale, just not listed. The first thing that I would look at is, of course, the bugs. All right, Southern California, well known for termites. And ours swarm because, as Marty told you, he can't dig a hole in his yard. So they're not, you can't just walk around looking for mud tunnels like you can in the South. You gotta actually go exploring. So that'd be number one on my list. Number two on my list would be calling and making sure I can get insurance. It's a hard market in general. It's harder now in California given a lot of recent circumstances, and you'd want to make sure that you could get it insured, that you would not that being with a fair plan is necessarily bad, but it's not necessarily good either. So you'd want to make sure that you could get insurance. And then the third thing that I would just do is the HVAC, the water heaters. There was a major redo as shown by the permits and as discussed here about 12 years ago or so. And so you'd want to, make sure that, hey, when was the last time the water heater was installed or updated or upgraded? Same with the furnace. Am I coming to end of life on those, or has something happened in the interim and I'm good to go? Those would be the things that I'd be looking for.
So, Marty, based upon this report and the things you know about this property, if it were for sale, what would be the top three things that you would look for at 232 Azores Road in Dana Point,
So
California?
32232 Azores Road. Uh, the thing that you don't get from the report is the view. Unobstructed, 280 degrees, mountains to the north with snow in the winter, ocean to the south. Um, protected by the ridge line above me from the glaring, brutal heat of the afternoon. So that's the reason we decided to like live here, even though there's like, besides maybe AAA Southern California, it's an insurance desert here. So it's difficult for me professionally to like still do insurance from here, but it's totally worth the effort. Now would have regretted not doing it. From the no surprises. I mean, the house was solid when we bought it. It's uh, lucky that we did all of our construction, kind of after the big financial meltdown and outside of COVID, because now there's so many people piling into the neighborhood that you can't even find a contractor. So, you know, better lucky than good on that one. Cost of rebuilding right now, through the roof. You can't talk about property right now without talking about the Palisades fire. Tragic. It could happen anywhere. There's a valley here. We worry about those things. Um, and just generally in California, when conditions are ripe, um, the nutbag arsonists come out. And how do you even do a risk assessment for that? You know it's a possibility, and you try to defend against it.
So if I were looking at, is it called Azores or
It's
Azores?
Azores, like the little islands. So there's
Like the
like the
islands. Yeah,
islands.
that's what I
So
thought.
yeah,
Okay,
so like the islands. So the thing about this community, they're all unique. What we wanted was a 1-story with 3-car garage on a cul-de-sac. So, that it had a view too was just a kicker.
well, you scored the view for sure. So for 32232 Azores Road in Dana Point, here are the 3 things I would think about given the PropertyLens report. Number 1 is, can I get insurance? Because of the and that's something that almost everybody should ask in California is, can I get an insurance quote before you make an offer? Because you got to figure that into the calculus of what it's going to cost to maintain that place year over year. So number 1 is wildfire insurance. Well, can I get insurance? And then the associated wildfire risk. Number 2 is the termites. I would probably just proactively tent it on change of hands. But otherwise, I'd feel really comfortable knowing that I asked the right questions. You answered them spectacularly well. I'd feel super confident. I would sleep better knowing the answer to those questions than I would have just relying on, some agent telling me, "Oh, it's just don't even worry about that." It's like, so to me, we look at these reports a lot and it's always like, "Oh my gosh, look at this." To me, it's more about, this is a peace of mind report for this location because it looks fantastic. And yeah, you got a couple of big concerns, wildfire insurance and termites, but otherwise it looks
Yeah.
spectacular.
Maybe the last thing is the buried utility lines. So, no power poles, no big transoms. Uh,
For a guy who's not selling his property, it sure sounds like you're pitching pretty heavily about why this property is so
It's
awesome.
why I'm not moving. It's like I even put in wheelchair height counters so that I can just roll up when I'm old.
I'm planning ahead, baby. I'm planning ahead. Okay, anything else we want to add before we head out on this little
No,
journey?
thanks for the extra minutes. Edit this down, and nobody can like listen to 40 minutes of us, but it sure was fun.
Oh, yeah, they can. Sure they can. All right, so first of all, big thank you to our special guest, Martin Ellingsworth. If you need to know someone in insurance, you need to talk to Barney. And for this week's Property of the Week, I'm
I'm
Bob
Jan
Frady.
Sigmund.
Party on.
Thanks for tuning in. And hey, click the subscribe button. Do that. It makes us feel better.